Welcome back. We all have those moments in our past we kind of wish we could just undo. Words we said, things we did. But what if the only real way to build a better future isn't about trying to erase the past, but about finding the courage to actually mend it? Today, we're going to deconstruct a really powerful tool for doing exactly that.
Okay, let's just dive right in. This is the heart of Step 8. And I know, at first glance, this can sound like a total guilt trip, right? Like some kind of recipe for punishment? But that's not it at all. The source material frames this as a profound tool for personal growth, a way to finally clear away the wreckage of our past so we can actually heal our relationships.
And this really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It feels so backward. Why on earth would we want to reopen old wounds? Why look back when all we want to do is move forward? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is pretty simple. You just can't build a solid new house on a foundation that's still filled with junk.
So let's get into the first part of this whole thing, just surveying the damage. The source material is super clear on this. Before we can build anything new and healthy, we have to repair what's broken. And you can't repair something until you take a good, honest look at it.
The goal here is not to beat yourself up. It's all about clarity. Think about it like trying to plant a new garden, but the yard is covered in rocks and old roots. You have to clear that debris first, right? This step is all about making an honest survey of that emotional debris, so you finally have a clean space to grow something new.
And look, let's be real. The source totally gets that this whole process looks intimidating from the outside. I mean, who really wants to voluntarily go back and look at painful memories, especially the ones where we were the one in the wrong? It can feel like this pointless, painful surgery, but, as we'll find out, it's often the only way to remove what's been festering just under the surface.
So before we can even think about making a list, we've got to understand the very real emotional roadblocks that are going to pop up. Our minds have these really sophisticated, kind of sneaky defense mechanisms to keep us from feeling this kind of discomfort.
And the source material points to four big ones, four major defenses our brain loves to use to protect us. They are resentment, fear, pride, and good old denial. So let's break down how each one of these works to keep us stuck in place.
Now, what's so fascinating about this slide is how perfectly it shows our number one defense. When we think about a relationship that went south, our first instinct is usually to focus on everything the other person did wrong. We grab onto their mistakes because, well, it's the perfect excuse to downplay or even completely forget our own part.
The source puts it pretty bluntly with this old saying. It's basically a reminder to, get our own house in order first. But it's even deeper than that. It points out that a lot of times our own bad behavior actually made the faults in other people even worse. We push their buttons, we strain their patience, we basically turn them into what the source calls fellow sufferers.
Okay, the next big roadblock is this powerful 1-2 punch of fear and pride. See, it's one thing to admit this stuff to ourselves, maybe to one other trusted person, but the sheer terror and, let's face it, the embarrassment of having to admit our behavior face-to-face to the people we actually hurt, that's when that voice of pride kicks right in, whispering, hey, just let bygones be bygones, don't stir up trouble. And last but not least, we have straight-up denial. This is that classic argument that our actions, whatever they were, only ever affected us. Hey, I paid the bills, I still showed up for work, it was a victimless crime. The source has a great name for this, purposeful forgetting. And it's a defense that can only really be broken by a deep, honest search of what our motives and actions really were. Okay, so let's say we get past those obstacles. Then we run smack into another critical question. What are we even looking for? This next section is all about defining what harm actually means, and it's probably way broader and deeper than you think. And this right here just brilliantly illustrates the core idea. See, harm isn't just about having bad intentions. It's about the damaging result that happens when our basic human instincts, for security, for relationships, whatever, collide with someone else's. It's about the damage we cause whether we meant to or not. Of course, you've got the obvious harms. The source calls this gross misbehavior. Things like lying, cheating, having a terrible temper, stuff that pretty clearly robs other people of their security and their peace of mind. Yeah, these are the easy ones to spot. But this is where the real deep work starts. The source asks us to look at the more subtle corrosive harms. Are we constantly irritable, impatient? Are we cold or callous? Do we have to dominate every conversation, or do we neglect the people who actually need our attention? Or maybe we wallow in self-pity, forcing everyone around us to live in that mood with us.
So here's the crucial point. These subtle personality flaws can be every bit as damaging as the big, obvious ones. They're the kinds of harm that just make daily life with a person really difficult and sometimes, honestly, completely unbearable. And they cause huge damage at home, at work, and everywhere else.
Okay, let's get practical. We get the purpose, we understand the roadblocks, we know what harm looks like. But how do you actually sit down and create this list without getting totally lost in judgment or drama?
Well, the source gives us a really clear 4-step guide. First, you just survey your life, kind of walking back year by year. Second, as you're making the list, you stick to admitting your part, just your part. Third, and this is so important, you simultaneously work on forgiving the wrongs that were done to you. Now, that's not to let them off the hook. It's to clear your own head so you can do the final step, being truly objective about your own actions.
The real key to this whole thing is objectivity. This isn't the time for dramatic, over-the-top self-hatred, and it's not the time for minimizing what happened either. The goal is to avoid those extreme judgments of yourself and the other person. What we're aiming for is a quiet, calm, factual look at the past.
So after all this difficult, heavy, introspective work, we finally get to the reward. I mean, what's the actual payoff for going on this journey? Well, the source is really clear that the rewards are pretty profound.
The purpose is actually twofold. Yes, of course, it's about making things right with other people. But just as important, it's about us. The source calls this process one of the most satisfying and valuable rewards. Because by looking closely at these broken relationships, we get this incredible insight into our own basic character flaws, the patterns that have been running our lives for years.
And here it is. This is the ultimate promise. See, the harm we've done, it builds walls. Brick by brick, it isolates us from other people, from ourselves, and from any kind of higher purpose or connection. This process, taking this honest look, is the first step in finally tearing down those walls. It is the beginning of the end of all that painful isolation.
So, we'll leave you with this to think about. We've all got some wreckage from our past. Taking the time to really look at it, not with blame, but with a simple willingness to see it clearly, that can be the very first step toward real connection and real freedom. So the question is, what debris from the past is holding you in isolation?